So growing up, I always loved solving mysteries. It was kind of a family tradition in my elementary school years to turn on the TV at 7 p.m. and go to the channel called Boomerang and turn on Scooby-Doo. Yeah. Scooby-Doo, where are you? And it's a great theme song, has a lovable dog, but the reason I really loved it was because I wanted to be able to figure out who was that person behind the mask of the bad guy in there. I loved solving mysteries. And whenever there was a mystery around the house that I was at, maybe it was a missing TV remote, don't worry, Detective Kevin is here to solve the case. Looking around for clues, seeing if there's any hints of any kind, because I loved solving mysteries. And mysteries have a way of capturing us and bringing us into a state of suspense. It brings us to the edge of our seats in the state of uncertainty and fogginess to try to solve the answers for these uncertainties. And maybe we don't go around everywhere with magnifying glasses, trying to solve the mystery and bringing out our inner Sherlock Holmes. But I wonder if sometimes when we're in life's difficult or uncertain or foggy situations, I wonder if we're tempted to take out our magnifying glasses and start solving the mysteries of our own lives. And I wonder if we do this at the expense of trusting God. This is what happened with Zechariah. Now, one time when Zechariah was in the temple, he was chosen by Lot to go burn some incense while other people were praying outside. And while he's just doing his priestly duty, he has an angel appear to him, the angel Gabriel. And he tells John, you're going to have a son and you're going to call him John. And John is going to turn the hearts of Israel back to God. And this is great news, except there is one teensy tiny little mystery. Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth were well along in years, and Elizabeth had been unable to conceive or have a child. Is anyone else having a little deja vu at the moment? But this is what Zechariah responds with. At this great and exciting news, Zechariah says in Luke 1:18, he says, how can I know this? Zechariah asked the angel. For I am an old man and my wife is well along in years. Zechariah didn't trust God. He took out his magnifying glass saying, let me solve this mystery. Maybe Zechariah has a point. I mean, it's not like God has ever done anything like this before, causing someone to conceive who was previously unable to conceive. It's not like he did that with Abraham and Sarah, or Jacob and Rachel, or Eli and Hannah. Okay, maybe he did. But what are the odds that this would happen now? What are the odds that this would happen at this exact moment, to me specifically? That the proper response here should have been for Zechariah to celebrate and rejoice at the fact that God had looked on him with favor. But instead, Zechariah took out his magnifying glass and said, let me examine this situation. I'm going to be the one to solve this mystery. I'm looking for the signs, but I don't see any evidence of that. This was a direct revelation from God, but Zechariah decided to put on his detective hat. Instead of trusting the word of God that transcends his situation. Instead, he magnified his situation instead of magnifying God. Later, the same angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. And he revealed to her that she would have a son whose name would be Jesus, and he would be called the Son of God. He would fulfill the Davidic covenant and establish the never-ending kingdom. He would save Israel from their sin. Except there was one teensy tiny little mystery. Mary was a virgin. And I'm not a biology major, but I'm pretty sure that virgin births are biologically and scientifically impossible. This doesn't just have low odds. This isn't just improbable. This is impossible. And Mary could have been tempted to take up this magnifying glass and start looking for clues and magnifying her situation to see if there's any evidence of this. But instead, here is how she responds in Luke 1:38. She says, "See, I am the Lord's servant," said Mary. May it happen to me as you have said." Then the angel left her. Mary didn't magnify her situation in hopes of solving a mystery. Instead, she trusted God with obedience and with joy, even if a virgin birth is biologically impossible. Now, a little bit later, while she's visiting Elizabeth, Mary sings out of rejoicing and with joy and obedience. She sings this song in Luke 1:46 through 55. She says, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, because he has looked with favor on the humble condition of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, because the Mighty One has done great things for me, and his name is holy. His mercy is from generation to generation on those who fear him. He has done a mighty deed with his arm. He has scattered the proud because of the thoughts of their hearts. He has toppled the mighty from their thrones and exalted the lowly. He has satisfied the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering his mercy to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he spoke to our ancestors." Through this song, Mary's saying, I don't need a magnifying glass to try and solve this mystery in order to see God working along the way. Instead, I am the magnifying glass that other people can look through and see a bigger and magnified picture of who God is. Seeing a magnified picture of God's grace and mercy and power and faithfulness and salvation. You see, Mary was able to grasp the following truth, that from generation to generation, God is always here. From generation to generation, God is always here. Even though sometimes we find ourselves in situations that are unclear or mysterious, we can take comfort in knowing that the same God of Hannah's generation and the same God of Mary's generation is also the same God of our generation. That the same God who's faithful to Hannah is the same God who's faithful to Mary, is the same God who's faithful to us. That the same God that brought salvation to previous generations is the same God that brings salvation to our generation. And that's through Jesus, the Son of God, the Emmanuel, the God with us. The same God of the past is the same God now. And part of what trusting God looks like is taking our magnifying glasses and placing it down on the table, surrendering it, taking a couple steps back and saying, God, I trust you. And instead of living in worry or fear about the future, instead of trying to solve the mystery of how everything's going to unfold, we can trust God living moment by moment with joyful obedience, becoming a living magnifying glass in testimony to God's faithfulness. God is faithful with his people from generation to generation. But what about year after year? Maybe you're here on a Tuesday tour as a high school senior, and you're excited to possibly go into college, maybe counting down the days, maybe still trying to figure out where you're going to go. But maybe some of you is also a little bit terrified at the fact of leaving your parents and going to an unknown place. And maybe God is calling you to put down the magnifying glass and stop magnifying your situation and instead magnify God's faithfulness as you proceed moment by moment through your final months of your high school years. Maybe you're a freshman this year, and you've fallen in love with the community here at Ozark, and you love every part of Ozark. You like all the classes you're in. But maybe even with all the friends and the faces that you've met, maybe there's still some of you that feels lonely or empty, and you can't quite put your finger on it. Maybe God's calling you to put down the magnifying glass and start magnifying the fact that God is faithful and dwells with you. Maybe you're a sophomore this year, and you are thinking about two different documents. You're thinking about your school bill and your bank statement. And you're looking at the numbers on them, and you're thinking, how in the world am I going to pay my school bill in the next few days? Maybe God's calling you to put down the magnifying glass and start trusting in God's providence for your life. Maybe you're a junior this year, and you've watched a large number of people get engaged and get married and move out of the dorm, but maybe you're still single, and you're starting to think that ring by spring may not actually happen. Maybe it's time for you to drop the magnifying glass and start trusting and waiting on God and magnifying who God is. Maybe you're a senior this year, and you're going to be graduating this semester or next semester, but you have no idea what your post-graduation plans look like. Maybe instead of worrying about where am I going to be or trying to solve the mystery of where you're going to be, maybe God's calling you to put down the magnifying glass and start trusting in his faithfulness for your future. Year after year, God is always here. But what about week after week? Now, in the summer of 2020, I did an internship at a nonprofit in my hometown called Mission Southside, and Mission Southside ministers to the Latino community in my hometown near Kansas City. And part of our responsibilities was to mentor and grow and help mentor the faith of a group of Latino middle schoolers. Mentoring them as they're growing in their leadership and in their faith. And the first week we talked about the importance of beginning with prayer. And at the end of the week, I talked to one of the seventh grade boys. His name was Carlos. And I asked Carlos, what's your takeaway for the week? And he thought about it for a few moments. And he said, that God is always there. And I'm like, awesome takeaway, Carlos. Second week, we talked about the importance of listening, both listening to God and with other people. At the end of that week, someone else walks up to Carlos, and they ask him, what did you learn this week? Carlos responded, that God is always there. That the third week, we talked about the importance of fellowship and sharing meals together. Carlos's takeaway, that God is always there. Fourth week, we talked about the importance of serving one another. Carlos responded that God is always there. Fifth week, we talked about the importance of sharing your story, about sharing the gospel and what God is teaching you. And at the end of that week, Carlos had something to share. It was that God is always there. We never directly talked about God's faithfulness directly head on. And Carlos wasn't necessarily super knowledgeable about the Bible. He wouldn't be baptized until the year after. But whether he realized it or not, Carlos was able to testify about the unceasing faithfulness of God week after week. What about moment by moment? Whenever Mary sang that song, she was able to put down that magnifying glass as she trusted God and magnified his attributes. But I wonder if there were moments in her life where she was tempted to pick that back up again. When Mary and Joseph were unable to find room at the inn, I wonder if Mary was starting to feel helpless and starting to look at that magnifying glass and start to pick it up. When Herod's starting a killing spree in order to kill baby Jesus, I wonder if she was starting to worry if God was still protecting her and still faithful to her. When Jesus stayed behind at the temple when he was 12 years old, I wonder if Mary got panicked at the fact that she had lost not only just a 12-year-old boy, but the Son of God. When Mary was standing at the site of Golgotha, watching her once baby Jesus get nailed to a cross, I wonder if she was tempted and remembered the angel's words and started to doubt the validity of the angel Gabriel and started to pick up that magnifying glass and start looking around to see if God's words were actually true. I wonder if at any of these moments, I wonder if she was tempted to start doubting God's faithfulness. And I wonder the same about us. Maybe we're focused on worshiping God while we're gathered together right now, but when 10:30 hits, I wonder if we simply walk out the door, scan our cards as we're supposed to, and forget about what God taught us by the time we get in line for Tendy Tuesday. I wonder if we hear about international catastrophes and grieve about some things like the war between Israel and Hamas. But I wonder if we fail to approach God with humble worship, knowing that he's going to come back a second time and he's going to bring justice. I wonder if when we sin, we end up magnifying our sin and how sinful wretches we are, instead of magnifying the grace and mercy of God and stepping into the freedom that Christ offers. I wonder if we're tempted to pick up the magnifying glass and start zooming in and lamenting about everything that's wrong with our world, like the prophet Habakkuk, but without saying the final words of Habakkuk's book, which says this in Habakkuk 3:17. He says, "Though the fig tree does not bud, and there is no fruit on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though the flocks disappear from the pen and there are no herds in the stalls, yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation." I wonder these things. I wonder if we believe them.